Hello friends, it's Karla back today with some Stampers Anonymous products. We have the medium size tags, they're etc. and they're quite large at 12 inches high. We have a mini stencil set, it's stencil set number 28 and it has 3 beautiful stencils. And we have the Botanic Collage stamp set, which is a mix of text and images there that you can see. And I've also got the Simple Stories Simple Vintage Lemon Twist paper. It has beautiful lemons and butterflies and bright yellows. I have the OLFA craft knife. I'm just trimming around that paper so I can apply it to the front of this chipboard tag. I've got a zebra mechanical pencil and I'm going to trace inside the hole there so we can cut that out with the OLFA scissors. They're really nice and small and sharp and I really love them for fussy cutting. So after we got that all trimmed out, I'm going to grab my adhesive. You can see some ink there that I'm going to be applying after I put the paper on. And we've got the Ultra Permanent Glue Runner from Scrapbook Adhesives by 3L. This is a really nice strong glue. It's not going anywhere. So after that's applied, I have my sponge dauber and I'm just applying some ink, and that's archival ink from Ranger. It's the vintage photo, and archival ink is not going to run. So I have some cute photos of my girls from school last year and I thought they went nicely inside that lemon twist frame. And I pulled out some stencils that I'm going to use and some of these beautiful stamps. I love that there's the floral and butterfly images as well as the text. Now I grabbed the bubbles stencil that I have and I love that it comes with a block. So I will be using this block with my other stamps as well. And I'm using the brand new Lost Shadow Distress ink from Ranger, and just this stamp alone, stamping that ink would sell me on this. I love the really soft look that you can get. Here's my NUVO cleaning cloth. That's from Tonic, and I really like cleaning my stamps with that. I find that it works really nicely. I just keep it in a little jar and it's damp and it just cleans everything off really well. So I'm stamping in various places with the Botanic Collage stamps, and because I'm using that archival ink, it's not going to run because I'm going to put some water and some mixed media over top. So when you're doing mixed media backgrounds, you kind of want to think about your layers, what you're going to be doing on top, and layer those things accordingly. So I did the stamping in the background. I'm not too worried about the Lost Shadow ink. If it bleeds a little bit, it's so nice and light. And I will also be adding a layer of some gesso over top, so that will help avoid any bleeding as well. So I'm just stamping various areas. Sometimes I'm doing the whole stamp and sometimes I'm just doing the text, and in those different colors of archival inks that are going to coordinate with the photos as well as the paints that I have to work with. I have some Tonic watercolor cardstock, and I'm just creating a little bit of a watercolor background with these paints and with some Distress Mica spray. So these paints are DYLUSIONS paints. They're by Ranger and they're called Shimmer paints, and they have a beautiful shimmery effect. And when they dry, they're so beautiful. So I grabbed the mica stain as well because that has a shimmer, and I didn't have the blue paint in the shimmer paints, although they do have one that's a similar color to the mica stain, and that's the Shiny Bauble mica stain. So you'll see when I hold this up, there's such a lovely shimmer, and I'm adding some of that Lost Shadow ink spray, the Distress Spray stain. It is lovely, and here I'm spraying that over the background as well, just to give a little bit of shadowing and kind of grunge up that background a little bit. I'm still adding some nice bright colors on top, but I love the splattery vintage effect that gives. So here's that Dina Wakley translucent gesso, and this is by Ranger as well. It's a clear gesso, and it's just pretty thin. You just put it all over your background, and then if you're painting or inking on top, everything's going to move around easier than if it was just on plain paper. And here I'm watering down the paints a little bit. I'm painting those beautiful flowers that are in the background, and now I'm adding the paint to my paper just to give it a pretty effect. And I find that holding my photos on top of my project, whether I'm making a layout or a project like this, gives me an idea of where I want to add any stencils or paints or inks or anything like that. So adding these colors, just mixing the blue and the yellow for a nice green to paint those leaves worked perfectly. And I have pink here. I don't want a whole lot of pink. I want to mix it mostly with the yellow just to get a bit of orange. And if you are just getting into paints and you're not sure what colors, I find that a pink, a blue, and a yellow always work well, because you can mix those and get whichever color you want. Here I'm just taking a stencil brush, that's from NUVO, and I'm adding some stenciling with ink onto the background, so that's another layer here. And those paints are great to stencil over as well. Now we've got some of the crackle paste, and this is a texture paste crackle, and this is by Ranger as well, and it's a really smooth, creamy paste. And after you have that on, you're just going to set that aside and let it dry, and it has these beautiful crackles in. And I love this stencil. It's almost like a stone look stencil, so it just adds to that crackle effect. Here's our background that's all nice and shimmery and dry, and I'm stamping on it with the butterfly stamps now because I'm going to cut them out, so I don't need the whole stamp on there. I'm mainly just focusing on the image and using the ARCHIVAL ink again. It's a nice ink to stamp on top of things as well. It's permanent. And then I decided, kind of after I had started, that I would use the Ranger Embossing ink and add the Lost Shadow glaze. So it's an embossing glaze. It's a clear translucent embossing powder. It is slightly gray, but because it's translucent, you can see everything through it, and it's just going over that black ink beautifully. So then I went ahead and cut out the images that I had stamped, and then I'll be able to keep the rest of that paper and just either die cut out of it or use it in various places. I've grabbed some grit paste. This is another one of the Ranger pastes. It's thicker and it has a gritty texture. So this would have looked lovely just like this. This one is translucent, so it's going to dry clear. I wanted to be able to see lots of that background. And I'm going to put the embossing glaze in the Lost Shadow over it so that it gives it a slightly gray tint. And I like doing this technique with the heat gun because it starts to bubble and it melts the embossing powder. It also bubbles that grit paste and just gives a really, really neat effect. If you wanted to just let it dry fully, either with or without the embossing powder, then you can do that as well, or you could emboss it after it dried and you wouldn't get so much bubbling either. But I just really love that effect. Now I'm using the white shimmer paint. The white is white linen. That pink is a bubblegum pink, and the yellow was a pure sunshine. So here I'm ripping some of the papers from the Lemon Twist Simple Stories paper and just adding those layers under my photos. And I've got some butterflies trimmed out of the Lemon Twist paper as well. And I'm adding some blue. And I need to paint the reinforcer that they've added in with that tag. So I've got the white linen and the pure sunshine shimmer paint, and I mix those together just for a little bit of a lighter yellow, and you can see that beautiful shimmer. And then I'm adding my layers on using the Ultra Permanent Scrapbook Adhesives by 3L gun. And I've got the Scrapbook Adhesives by 3L foam tape roll, which I absolutely love, especially if you're adding it to larger areas like behind this photo frame. The backing comes off of it really nice and it sticks really well. And it also, these are the 3L foam squares, and they have the same height as the tape, so you can really mix and match what you're using depending on the size that you need, and you don't have to worry that there'll be different heights. So I've got my butterflies attached, and I'm going to add a little banner just by trimming some of the paper. And adding a little bit of ink right around those edges. So I popped that up with some foam squares as well, added a heart, and here Erica wanted to help me. She's my 11-year-old daughter, and we're adding some of the dewdrops from the robin's nest. They're beautiful gems in various colors. They come in the sweetest bottles, and we're applying those with the small 0.12 millimeter glue dots from the Scrapbook Adhesives by 3L. So here's a look at it completely finished.